Hang on. I have to put on my thespian my thespian mode. Okay. Here goes. Bear in mind, I'm not an actor, but I'm gonna quote something for you. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and feels his hour of. See, I messed it up already. Anyways, out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts that and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Yeah, I'm starting a video reviewing WandaVision by quoting Shakespeare's Macbeth. It might make sense. It might not. It's just going to be my rambling-ish attempt to do a review of WandaVision. So, yeah, hi. Anyways, I'm Taylor. Welcome back to my channel. And, like I just said, this is going to be my review of WandaVision after I turn off my email so I stop getting notifications, because I'm a pro and I'm doing this in one take, like Bill O'Reilly used to. The madman, the genius, the bigot, the moron. Okay, so WandaVision. My first thought, and I'm going to be spoilery from here on out, and I make the hand gesture so make sure I write spoilers in the wee little bit of editing I do. Spoilers. You've been warned. Stop watching this if you've not seen it. Go watch the damn show, make up your own mind, and then come back. So, okay, my first initial thought after watching this is, oh boy, did Marvel do a really good job trolling its fans and trolling the comic speculators and trolling the community at large. If you've been paying attention to the YouTube regarding this, or Instagram, or articles, or whatever, people have been speculating wildly on every little aspect of this show. They were bound to determine that characters would make an appearance, and comic prices went bananas over like the slightest hint of that something could be something that might be something that might turn into something that might lead to something that might turn into the multiverse and all this blah, 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 blah. In the end, however, almost none of that came to place. People spent a boatload of money on comics that were in the dollar bin a couple weeks ago, and to the dollar bin they shall return. Or not quite dollar bin, but, whatever. There was no Mephisto. There's no X-Men. There's no Fantastic Four. There's no Chthon. There's no... I can't even remember what people were all saying. They were specking on and saying who's going to show up in this show. A few people did. We'll get to that. But for the most part, it was just kind of a great little troll job by Marvel. A.k.a. a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Not nothing. Some things did change, and this does change some things in the MCU going forward. But I think Marvel hedged their bets with this show. I think they knew it was they knew it was going to end up being their first show out, and I don't think they wanted to take a whole lot of chances with it. And I know that sounds weird because it's definitely not your typical MCU property, and like storytelling wise, they did actually take some chances, but they didn't. I don't think they knew how it was going to go over with the audience, and so I don't think they wanted to introduce major villains or major characters or set up major plot points in this first show. They dropped some Easter eggs and some stuff that still might come to fruition, but they didn't really do anything grand as far as changing the structure of things for the most part. We'll get to the things they did change, obviously, but it was a much smaller story than I think people were expecting, and it had a much tighter focus, and it was a self-contained tale, which Marvel kind of hinted said it was going to be, that focused on grief and loss and sorrow, and didn't try to flex its wings too much. I mean, it like I said, it did break some ground, and it did have some fun and interesting bits, especially the first 7 episodes, which were all going through the eras of a sitcom, and I really enjoyed those. Those were my favorite parts of the series, where I think there were some of the episodes that people didn't care for as much. The first 3 I especially liked, the black and white and when they were just going through the sitcom tropes, because that's kind of how I grew up. I grew up watching old Dick Van Dyke and Bewitched and all these shows that they heavily referenced. And I liked the little cracks they showed in the universe in those episodes, and the sense of unease they managed to build, and the sense of tension, and the sense that you knew something was wrong. You just didn't know what or who was making it wrong. And that I thought that was fantastic. Once they did the great reveal it became a bit less interesting to me. And that's episode 7 and 8, when Agatha was behind everything, and that was when people were still bound and convinced that she really wasn't, but it was Mephisto behind her. And it still maybe will turn into that in the future, although I heavily doubt it, because I read a couple articles saying that international markets really don't love it when you put religious figures in as bad guys, and not that Mephisto's necessarily a true religious figure, but he's definitely a devil stand-in, a Satan stand-in. And I don't think Marvel's going to piss off their international market because it's just too much revenue for them to risk. I know it sounds like a cold-hearted decision, but I kind of think that's true. Fight me in the comments, people. Fight me in the comments. Okay, anyways. Once the reveal happened, once Agatha was revealed to be quote-unquote the bad guy, and there was also what's-his-nuts, the head director of S.W.O.R.D., who was also a bad guy, but kind of wasn't, but kind of was. He was a dick, but he wasn't necessarily a huge bad guy. He was just like, okay, shit went down, and we gotta go rescue this town and do all this crap. And, he was manipulative, and he was a jerk, but he was kind of a political figure. And aren't they all manipulative jerks? Almost all of them. Almost. Mostly. 99.999%. Anyways, another tangent, another day. I'm not head whiskey. We're not talking politics. Okay, so Agatha's behind it all, and that was episode 7 of 9. There's 9 episodes in this thing, and then episode 8, which I think a lot of people really liked, was my least favorite episode. And this review, I'm not going to try and spoil a whole lot of actual plot. I mean, there's spoilers and stuff, and I'm making sure I warned you all that, but I don't want to give away everything. However, episode 8 was just the exposition dump of the show. And it was all told through flashback, and, the villain revealed their grand plan by talking throughout the entire grand plan, which turns out to bite her in the ass in the next episode, because who could have predicted that? That's not a comic trope at all. Although I did still enjoy some of the comic tropiness of it. It's definitely a trope. And just a general, James Bond villain trope. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. And then they tell you the entire plan before they, all that. So, I thought there was a more clever way they could have done it than just having, a pretty much straight flashback episode and explaining everything. They could have left some of it a mystery. They left a little bit. They didn't really explain how Agatha got into the town and, snuck in and really started messing with Wanda. Really, they kind of left a little bit of that vague, but they really explained, I think, a little bit too much. I think a little more mystery would have gone a long way. And yeah, it's they planted Easter eggs or things to troll with the audience. I'm kind of going through my notes. Like Pietro, he was supposed to introduce the X-Men, and it was Evan what's-his-face from the other movies and not from the MCU. So that was the big sign the X-Men were coming and the multiverse is coming, and Wanda is going to crack it all open like an egg. We all know the multiverse is coming. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to be the next film. It's coming. They just didn't do it here. They made a fake Pietro, or Fietro, if you're nasty, and who ended up being a guy named Ralph Boner, which is awesome. I loved it. That was probably my favorite troll of the series. It also ties back to Growing Pains, which is, Start a Bigot and had some other stuff. But the character that they referenced, not so subtly, was Richard Boner Stabone, who's a vegan activist and everything pretty much you could ask for in a human. He just happened to die 10 years ago. So I think it was a nice little subtle tribute to him and a subtle little callback to the 80s in that way too. I don't know if everyone caught that one. Probably did, but we used to call each other boners after watching that show. We thought it was the funniest thing. And honestly, Boner's still funny. It'll never not be funny. Okay, so Marvel did actually introduce some things that'll potentially go forward, like Speed and Wiccan, Marvel and Vision's kids, or Marvel's kids that were created somehow. That still might lead to a supernatural explanation, and there's no really saying what happened to the kids. In the end credits kind of allude that they're still out there, and they could be a force, and it could set up the Young Avengers, and all this stuff. People are still grossly overpaying for comic books on. But they just didn't really do it here. And then the White Vision, that episode 50, West Coast Avengers, the one, that's now $1,000 book that was a dollar bin book last 6 months ago. To the dollar bin, it shall return. I think maybe. I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. And I spec wrong a lot. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think that's going to be a long-term thing. Vision, went off to do his own thing and stuff, and kind of just pissed off at the end of the show. It was kind of like, oh, okay, there you go. I did like some of the other characters that they introduced or reintroduced, and like I think Randall Park's character Jimmy Woo and Kat Dennings' character Darcy Lewis might have some legs in the upcoming next stages of the MCU as at least side characters. I could see them getting their own Disney show down the line. Neither of them really have a lot of history in the comics. Jimmy Woo's been around, but not really. They haven't done a lot with him. But I think it'd be a great little buddy cop, sort of lighthearted X-Men, or maybe a mini episode kind of thing that I think Marvel could do on the cheap, and that'd be something. Monica Rambeau, she's gonna be around probably in the next Captain Marvel movie as Spectre or Proton or whatever her name is, Neutron or whatever. Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel. Characters had a lot of names, and I liked most of the side characters introduced. I liked Boner. I liked Jimmy Woo. I liked Darcy Lewis. I even liked the bad guy. I can't think of his name. He's not that memorable. And I thought that Agatha Harkness, what's her face? I can't think of the lady that played her, but great. And yeah, I know this is my rambling review. The side characters really helped make the show interesting, and the sitcom parts helped make the show interesting. Where I think it faltered a bit is when it turned back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe typical show. Like, I think they could have probably played around with almost the entire story told within the Hex and have people come in and out of the Hex without having that entire other part of the story. I think there was a way they could have done it, and I think that would have been a little bit... No, I think it would have been a lot better. I do... Like, the sword stuff, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., whatever you call it this week, it's just kind of... That's where it became typical. And then the last episode... The fight, everyone fights. You knew there was going to be a fight. But they had such potential to have it be a really clever thing. And in the end, there was a couple minor little nuggets of greatness in the last episode, but it just didn't. It's like the cleverness ramped up and kind of went, and fizzled and died, I thought. I do like that the Vision beat the Vision with a logic puzzle. Spoilers again, and the fact that because of the giant exposition dump, Wanda was able to use what she learned in that giant exposition dump to defeat her enemy. Which that's a very Bond thing. It's like, oh, Bond, you now know my entire plan. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to use your plan against you. WandaVision, and they really turned the biggest thing I think that's going to come out of this is. If the characters keep going, like, I don't know, it's all contractual and all this stuff, the behind the scenes that everyone really analyzes, and I'm not getting into all that. I don't read Variety. I don't follow all of that. I think the most interesting thing is they turned Wanda into a villain. She kept an entire town hostage, as she was kept hostage as a wayward youth, and turned pretty evil, and made a lot of people suffer. People when they were released from her hold. They were miserable in the hold, and they were unable to control their actions or their thoughts, even, for the most part, it seemed like. And so she was pretty cruel. And even in the end credit scene, they didn't really show her reflecting upon that much. It was more like, oh, how do I still get my kids back? And there is some interesting potential there to have her be a very compelling villain. And I think it took Marvel a long time to realize compelling villains are what really makes the great stories. Their first 10 movies-ish had okay villains, but it wasn't really until, I would say, the Black Panther and Killmonger, where they really learned and realized the villain story is almost more important than the hero story. And then Endgame with Thanos and Infinity War with Thanos, they made Thanos one of the more interesting characters in there because you cannot have a good hero story without having a good villain story. And what was the quote that JPG always butchers it from that Spider-Man booth, and I'm going to butcher it again. It's I think it's a Thanos quote. You live long enough to become the villain of your own story. I'm pretty sure he lifted that from some more famous author. It might even be Shakespeare again. Who knows? I'm not researching it. I researched the one quote in the beginning, folks. That's all the research you get out of me. You don't get more. But yeah, Wanda's lived long enough to become the villain of her own story. She's the villain, until her character reflects upon that, and if realizes that the horror she's inflicted. I mean, again, they sort of sewed it in the end, but she had a bit of like remorse and stuff, and like eventually made the right decision to let the town go. But then after that, she was still right back to her evil, working with the Darkhold and stuff, and like trying to. I don't know why I'm making air quotes around all that either, but she was working with the Darkhold and trying to get her kids back, and still looked like she might potentially be willing to sacrifice more things to get what she wants, and that's a villain, if you stop and think about it. So, yeah, that kind of my brief thoughts on the show. What did you guys think? Have you all watched it? I hope so. If you've not watched it, go watch it. I mean, even after this, I hopefully left it vague enough where you can still watch it and get some enjoyment. And if you really disagree with me, which I expect some of you will, let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this and want me to keep doing more kind of reviews like this, let me know that too. I think it's comic book related enough that it applies to my channel, and hopefully folks get some enjoyment out of it. And at the end of the day, that's all I can ask for. They should have called the show WandaVillain, though. Or had the last episode called WandaVillain. I know. That's what I would have done. But, all right. On that note, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And as always, don't be a dick. You can be the villain. Just don't be a dick.